Back in 2011, when I became a student of watchmaking, I had learnt of the historic role that Britain played in the development of a modern mechanical watch and the decline that had gone through. And I thought it was a real shame, and it felt as if it was something that I could help be part of a rebirth and reinvigoration of the industry in this country. The goals of the company are to help promote and educate the public on the historic role of Britain in watchmaking, and to use my skills and to get skills of other locally sourced craftspeople to help develop almost an industry that can help be part of that rebirth of watchmaking in Britain. It's my ultimate goal that when people see made in Great Britain or made in Britain or made in the UK on a watch, that's a real sign of excellence in watchmaking. Although I started the company in 2011 while I was still a student, it soon became quite clear to me that I was perhaps trying to bite off more than I could chew, in that it was actually a huge challenge to start producing something from nothing. There is no established watchmaking industry in the UK, and so if I wanted to create something, I'd need to do it from scratch. And so I realised quite early on that I would need to really build up my skills and experience within the industry first, before I could really take on the challenge of making my own watch. What I started with was building my own watch in my own spare time, trying to do every single part so that I could prove that it was something that could be done. That took me a period of 7 years, where every part of the watch that I made was probably remade 10 times, because I'd start with one part, and by the time I'd get to the end of the process, I'd look at that first part I made and thought, oh, I think I could do that a little bit better. And that process repeated about 10 times until eventually I said, okay, that's probably enough. I think I've made the point that I can demonstrate that I can make my own watch. And with that confidence behind me, I thought, right, okay, now it's time to really take on that challenge that I set myself in the beginning and start producing watches in Britain. Clearly, I couldn't take 7 years to make each one, so I needed help to refine the process and make sure that I was able to manufacture things to a real standard that could be repeated, because I was really wanting to build that process, that blueprint, that in the future, if anyone else or myself wants to create another series of watches, that actually it's become much easier, that the groundwork has already been laid. So in September of 2019, I started to went from working full-time to working part-time, where I was employed. And then in December 2019, I actually stopped working as an employed individual and started working for myself full-time, with the goal of creating my own series of watches. And that then developed into the Few, which was the watch that I am creating from parts of a Spitfire. So obviously, as soon as I had almost started working on the project, the COVID-19 pandemic began. So that was the first initial hurdle. Now, thankfully, I was already arranged to set up to work from home, but it was, I say, a real challenge, because a lot of these people that I needed to work with and needed help from were all furloughed or were working on different projects, and it was very, very difficult to get that initial contact with people so that we could build that relationship going forwards. Obviously as well, choosing to work with a Spitfire material, I was working with metal that was almost 80 years old and had been, for the most part, laid in a pond in northern France. It wasn't really suitable to be used in something that's so accurate and precise as a wristwatch. And then also, one of the biggest challenges is that I was trying to do something in Britain that there wasn't an established industry to help me for. So when I was approaching people and saying, can you help me to make the case of the watch, or help me to help produce the dial, this is the ideas I have, you were asking people to do something that they had no experience of doing before, and it was generally in quite small quantities. So when the COVID pandemic started to lessen and the country opened up again, that when I was approaching companies with what was technically quite a challenge for them and in quite a small number, it often took quite a bit of persuading. Thankfully, I'm obviously working with a Spitfire that really got people's enthusiasm and passion for the project. And when you told them and explained to them about what I was trying to achieve and help revitalise the British watchmaking industry, that they could really feel that passion and they really shared the enthusiasm going forward, and really put their hearts into the project and helping it become a realisation. One of the most frequently asked questions is, what am I going to do next? In many ways, I don't want to think too much about the next project, because if I get too excited about what I'm doing next, then that will distract me from finishing off the current work that I'm involved in creating the Few. There certainly are a lot of opportunities available to me, some of them really exciting, using both reclaimed material or trying to do something new. But certainly, because of the groundwork that I've done on creating this watch, so that blueprint is there, the relationships are made, and when I want to do the next project, in many ways a lot of the hard work's already been completed, and so it will be a lot more straightforward for me to start work on a new series of watches. Certainly I'm going to want to look to bring a lot more work in-house. I feel a lot more confident to start producing parts of the movement, and so eventually it will lead us to being in a situation where we can actually produce our own in-house British-made movements, initially on a small scale, but then obviously as time goes on, bringing that into mass manufacture.
Great British Watch Company.